"Mom, do you remember signing those papers?" My son Ryan asked the question so casually that anyone else might have missed the tension hiding underneath it. We were sitting in my kitchen on a gray October afternoon, the kind of Pennsylvania day when the clouds seemed to hang low over the maple trees outside my window. I looked up from the mug of tea, warming my hands, and frowned. "What papers?" I asked. For just a second, something flickered across Ryan's face. Surprise, maybe concern. Then it vanished. Before he could answer, Vanessa stepped into the room, carrying a grocery bag. "It's okay," she said with a gentle smile that never quite reached her eyes. "The doctor said confusion is normal, Eleanor." Confusion. The words settled over the kitchen like dust. I was 76 years old, not 96. Yes, I misplaced my reading glasses sometimes. Yes, I occasionally forgot why I had walked into a room. But after losing my husband, Arthur, 2 years earlier, I had learned that grief could make anyone absent-minded. Still, lately, people seemed eager to explain my thoughts for me, especially Vanessa. She set the groceries on the counter and immediately began unpacking them, organizing my kitchen as if it belonged to her. Ryan avoided looking directly at me. "It's nothing important, Mom," he said. "Just some paperwork from a few months ago." A few months ago, I searched my memory. Medical forms, insurance documents, tax records. Nothing stood out. Yet the certainty in his voice bothered me. "What kind of paperwork?" I asked again. Vanessa laughed softly. "See, this is exactly what the doctor meant. You don't need to worry about those things anymore." The comment stung more than I wanted to admit. For 40 years, I had managed every bill, every account, every mortgage payment in this house. Arthur used to joke that I could organize a hurricane if given enough filing folders. Now suddenly I was being treated like someone incapable of remembering her own name. I glanced around my kitchen, the yellow curtains I had sewn myself, the oak table Arthur built in our garage one summer, the family photographs lining the shelves. Everything looked familiar. Everything felt familiar. Yet lately there had been moments that made me uneasy. Missing mail, bank statements arriving later than usual, Vanessa insisting she handle phone calls for me. Little things. Harmless things, at least on the surface. Ryan checked his watch. "We should get going," he said. Vanessa nodded immediately. "Remember to take your medication," she told me. "And don't worry yourself over paperwork." They left 10 minutes later. I stood at the front window and watched their SUV disappear down the street. The silence that followed felt heavier than usual. I returned to the kitchen and stared at my tea. It had gone cold. The question lingered in my mind. "Do you remember signing those papers?" If the papers were unimportant, why ask about them at all? Why had Ryan looked nervous? Why had Vanessa rushed to answer for me? I told myself I was imagining things. Age had a way of turning small concerns into large ones. But that evening, while sorting through a drawer in my study, I noticed something else. A gap. A missing folder. The blue folder where I kept copies of property records and legal documents related to the house. I checked again, then a third time. It was gone. I sat back slowly in my chair. Outside, the wind rattled the branches against the window. For the first time in months, a cold feeling settled deep in my stomach. Maybe I had misplaced it. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. Or maybe the question Ryan asked wasn't as innocent as it sounded. I looked toward the hallway where Arthur's portrait still hung. The house felt strangely quiet. Too quiet. And for the first time, I began to wonder if something had been happening right in front of me while everyone assumed I was too confused to notice. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the empty space in my filing drawer where the blue folder should have been. By sunrise, I had convinced myself there had to be a simple explanation. Perhaps I had moved it months ago and forgotten. Perhaps it was sitting in a closet upstairs. I spent the next 2 hours searching every room in the house. I checked cabinets, desk drawers, storage boxes, and even the old cedar chest at the foot of my bed. The folder was nowhere. As I moved through the house, I began noticing other things. Small things. The kind of details that seem meaningless until they start forming a pattern. Several months earlier, I had stopped receiving paper statements from my bank. Ryan told me they were switching customers to online delivery and offered to help manage the account. At the time, I appreciated his concern. After Arthur passed away, dealing with financial paperwork often felt overwhelming. Then there were the phone calls. More than once, I had answered the ringing telephone only to hear the caller ask for Ryan instead of me. When I questioned him about it, he laughed and said companies often called the wrong person. Now I was no longer sure. Around noon, I made myself a turkey sandwich and sat by the kitchen window. The backyard looked exactly as it always had. The bird feeder Arthur built still hung from the old maple tree. The garden beds were preparing for winter. Nothing had changed, yet somehow everything felt different. My eyes drifted toward the driveway. I remembered a conversation from the previous spring. Vanessa had been helping me sort through old documents when she casually asked where I kept the deed to the house. I had not thought much of it then. She claimed she was organizing emergency information in case anything happened to me. It seemed thoughtful at the time. Looking back, I could remember exactly how interested she had been, exactly how many questions she asked. Later that afternoon, I drove to the grocery store. The trip was only 3 miles from my house, but lately Ryan seemed nervous whenever I drove alone. He often suggested that Vanessa take me instead. As I pushed my car through the aisles, I ran into Mrs. Patterson, a retired schoolteacher who lived 2 streets over. We chatted for several minutes about the weather and the upcoming holidays. Before leaving, she smiled and said something that stayed with me. "You are looking much sharper these days, Eleanor. Last summer your daughter-in-law kept telling everyone you were having memory problems." I forced a smile. "Did she?" Mrs. Patterson nodded. "Oh yes. She seemed very worried. About you." After she walked away, I stood motionless beside a display of canned soup. Memory problems. Vanessa had been discussing my health with neighbors. The realization made my stomach tighten. When I returned home, I checked my mailbox. There were only advertisements and a utility bill. As I turned to go inside, my mail carrier pulled his truck to the curb. We had known each other for years. "Afternoon, Eleanor," he called. Then he hesitated. "Did everything get sorted out with that certified letter?" I looked at him. "What certified letter?" His expression changed immediately. "A legal envelope. A few weeks ago, someone signed for it at the house." My pulse quickened. I never saw any legal envelope. He frowned. "Well, somebody accepted delivery. I remember because certified mail always requires a signature." I thanked him and slowly walked back to the front porch. The house suddenly felt larger than usual. Quieter. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. Somewhere in this house, pieces of a story were missing. A missing folder. Missing mail. Conversations happening without me. For months, I had assumed my family was protecting me. Standing alone in the silence of my living room, I began to consider a possibility that frightened me far more than growing older. What if they were not protecting me at all? The next morning, I decided not to call Ryan. Not yet. For years, whenever something felt wrong, I confronted it directly. Arthur used to admire that about me. He would say that uncertainty bothered me more than bad news. But this felt different. Every answer I received seemed to create 2 new questions. I spent the morning cleaning the house, more out of habit than necessity. As I dusted the bookshelves in the living room, I noticed another small change. The spare key that had always hung inside the hall closet was missing. I stood there staring at the empty hook longer than I should have. Maybe Ryan had borrowed it. Maybe Vanessa had moved it while organizing. Maybe. That word was becoming the foundation of too many explanations. Around noon, Vanessa stopped by unexpectedly. She carried a container of homemade soup and wore the same warm smile she always showed in public. "I thought you could use a nice lunch," she said as she stepped inside. Her voice sounded pleasant, but I found myself studying her more carefully than ever before. She moved through the house comfortably, almost possessively, opening cabinets without asking and checking the thermostat as if she lived there. While she poured soup into a bowl, her eyes drifted toward the hallway leading to my study. It was only a glance, lasting less than a second, but I noticed it. "You seem tired," she said. "Have you been sleeping well?" "Well enough," I replied. "I spent yesterday looking for some old files." The spoon paused in her hand. Just briefly. Then she smiled again. "Old files can be frustrating. Sometimes we put things away and forget." Her answer sounded rehearsed. Later, while she washed dishes at the sink, I quietly walked into the study. The filing cabinet remained locked exactly as I had left it. Yet something felt wrong. I opened the bottom drawer and examined the remaining folders one by one. Several were slightly out of order. Not much, just enough to suggest someone had searched through them. When Vanessa left an hour later, I stood at the front window and watched her drive away. The moment her car disappeared, I returned to the study and began looking through every document I owned. Property tax records, insurance forms, utility bills. Bank correspondence. Piece by piece, I rebuilt a picture of my finances. What I found unsettled me. Several documents referenced mailing addresses that were no longer current. Others listed contact information that I had never authorized. Most disturbing of all, a recent property assessment had been completed without my knowledge. I read the paperwork 3 times to make sure I understood it correctly. Someone had requested information about the house. Someone with access. That evening I made coffee and sat at Arthur's old desk. The house creaked softly in the autumn wind. I found myself staring at a framed photograph taken nearly 20 years earlier. Ryan stood beside me, smiling proudly after buying his first car. Back then, he called me almost every day. He asked my advice about everything. I tried to reconcile that young man with the one who now seemed uncomfortable whenever I asked simple questions. A little after 8 o'clock, my phone rang. Ryan. I answered immediately. Hi, Mom. His voice sounded careful. Just checking in. We exchanged a few minutes of ordinary conversation before he casually asked whether any important mail had arrived recently. The question hit me like a cold draft through an open door. I kept my voice steady. Nothing unusual, I said. There was a brief silence on the line. Then he said good night and ended the call. I sat motionless, holding the phone long after the screen went dark. The missing folder, the certified letter, the questions about paperwork, the concern over my memory. None of it felt accidental anymore. For the first time, I stopped wondering whether something was being hidden from me. Instead, I began wondering how much had already been hidden. For the next several days, I said nothing. I called no one. I asked no questions. Instead, I paid attention. It was remarkable how much people revealed when they believed you were no longer paying attention. Ryan and Vanessa visited twice that week. Both times, they behaved exactly as they always had. Vanessa brought food. Ryan asked whether I needed help with errands. Their words sounded caring, but I had started listening for what was hidden beneath them. During their second visit, Ryan walked into the living room carrying a stack of papers. Just some routine documents, he said. Nothing urgent. He placed them on the coffee table but turned the pages away from me. A few years earlier, I would have laughed at such an obvious gesture. Now I simply watched. You can leave them there, I said. I will look at them later. A strange expression crossed his face. Not relief. Not disappointment. Something in between. Later that evening, after they left, I found myself remembering conversations from the past year. Small moments that seemed insignificant when they happened. Vanessa encouraging me to let Ryan handle financial matters. Ryan insisting that online banking was safer if he helped manage it. Vanessa repeatedly suggesting that a smaller home might be easier for someone my age. At the time, every suggestion sounded reasonable. Looking back, they all pointed in the same direction. The realization unsettled me. The following Monday, I drove to the county records office. The building sat 20 miles away in the county seat, a quiet brick structure surrounded by government offices. I had not visited in years. The clerk behind the counter was kind and patient. When I explained that I wanted copies of recent public records connected to my property, she helped me fill out the request forms. I waited nearly 40 minutes while she searched the system. Finally, she returned carrying several documents. These are the most recent filings connected to your address, she said. I thanked her and carried the papers to a nearby table. My hands felt steady until I began reading. Then everything changed. There it was. My address, my legal description, my property information, and attached to it was paperwork I had never seen before. According to the filing, discussions about ownership arrangements had already begun months earlier. My eyes moved slowly across every page. I searched for an explanation that would make sense of what I was seeing. Instead, each paragraph deepened my concern. Someone had been taking steps involving my home without ever discussing them with me. Someone had signed documents. Someone had provided information. Yet I could not remember participating in any of it. I sat there for a long time staring at the pages. Around me, people came and went. Phones rang. Doors opened and closed. The ordinary sounds of the building seemed distant. Finally, I gathered the documents and returned to my car. The drive home felt longer than usual. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed a vehicle parked across the street. A man sat inside reviewing papers on a clipboard. Perhaps it was nothing. A contractor, an inspector, a utility worker. Yet as I stepped from my car, he glanced toward the house before driving away. That evening, I spread the county records across Arthur's old desk and studied them again. Piece by piece, The picture was becoming clearer. Someone had started a process involving my property. Someone believed they had the authority to do it. And for the first time, I found evidence suggesting that the missing folder and the missing certified letter were not separate mysteries at all. They were connected, very connected. The question was no longer whether something was happening behind my back. The question was how far it had already gone. When I woke up the next morning, I made a decision that surprised even me. I was going to stop acting like someone searching for answers and start acting like someone who had none. If Ryan and Vanessa truly believed my memory was failing, then perhaps that belief could work in my favor. The idea felt uncomfortable at first. I had spent my entire life proving that I was capable, organized, and dependable. Pretending otherwise went against every instinct I had. Yet the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. People reveal far more when they think they are safe. That afternoon, Ryan stopped by after work. As soon as he walked through the door, I greeted him with a puzzled expression. "Ryan, is today Tuesday or Thursday?" I asked. He looked surprised. "Thursday, Mom." I nodded slowly and thanked him. The concern in his face appeared genuine, but something else appeared too. Relief. It vanished almost immediately, yet I saw it. During dinner, I deliberately repeated the same question twice. Later, I pretended to forget where I had placed my reading glasses, even though they were sitting beside me. Ryan patiently helped me search. Each time I acted confused, his shoulders seemed to relax a little more. By the end of the evening, he appeared completely convinced. The following weekend, both Ryan and Vanessa came over together. I continued the performance. I mixed up dates. I referred to a neighbor by the wrong name. At one point, I even asked whether Arthur had called recently before correcting myself and quietly apologizing. Vanessa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Do not worry about it," she said softly. "These things happen." Her voice sounded sympathetic. Her eyes did not. Over the next 2 weeks, I maintained the act carefully. Never too much. Never enough to seem dramatic. Just enough to confirm what they already wanted to believe. The effect was immediate. They became less cautious around me. Conversations that once stopped when I entered a room now continued. Documents appeared on countertops without being hidden right away. One afternoon, I walked into the kitchen while they were speaking quietly. Vanessa lowered her voice, but not before I heard the words long-term planning. Ryan glanced at me and smiled. "Everything okay, Mom?" I smiled back and asked what year it was. The answer seemed to satisfy him. A few days later, I discovered something even more valuable. I had been sitting in the sunroom pretending to read a magazine when I heard voices drifting in from the backyard patio. The window was slightly open. Ryan and Vanessa were discussing paperwork again. Most of their words were too distant to hear clearly, but one sentence reached me. "As long as nobody challenges it, everything should be finalized soon." My grip tightened on the magazine. Finalized. The word echoed in my mind long after they left. That evening, I reviewed the county records once more. Every page seemed less confusing now. Whatever process had begun was still moving forward. More importantly, Ryan and Vanessa appeared confident that no one would interfere. I sat alone at Arthur's desk as darkness settled outside the windows. The house felt different than it had a month earlier. Not because it had changed, but because I had changed. The uncertainty was fading. In its place came clarity. They believed they understood exactly how much I knew. They believed they could predict every question I would ask and every step I would take. And that mistaken belief was beginning to reveal far more than any missing document ever could. 3 days later, the opportunity one had been waiting for finally arrived. Ryan called that morning and told me he and Vanessa would stop by after dinner because they needed to review a few things. The wording immediately caught my attention. Review a few things. Not discuss. Not explain. Review. As though decisions had already been made somewhere else. That evening, I followed the same routine I had practiced for weeks. I acted distracted. I asked simple questions twice. I occasionally paused before answering. By now, they expected it. In fact, they seemed more comfortable every time I behaved that way. After dinner, Vanessa suggested making coffee while Ryan gathered several folders from his briefcase. I remained seated at the kitchen table, quietly observing. The documents stayed turned away from me. Again, Ryan flipped through pages while speaking in a reassuring tone. "Nothing complicated, Mom. We are just making sure everything is organized for the future." I nodded slowly. "That sounds nice." The answer appeared to satisfy him. An hour later, they left. Or at least, they thought they had. 10 minutes after their car backed out of the driveway, I realized Vanessa had forgotten her sunglasses. They were sitting on the kitchen counter. I considered calling her, but decided against it. If she noticed they were missing, she would come back herself. 20 minutes later, headlights swept across the front windows. Right on schedule. I heard a car door close outside. Then another. Instead of coming through the front entrance immediately, Ryan and Vanessa stopped near the side patio. Their voices drifted through the partially open window beside the breakfast nook. At first I could only hear fragments. Then the conversation became clearer. She did not question any of it, Vanessa said. Because she cannot keep track anymore, Ryan replied. My chest tightened, but I remained still. The assessment helps our case, Vanessa continued. And once everything is finalized, there is nothing anyone can do. Papers rustled. Then came a sentence I would never forget. The house is practically ours already. Silence filled my kitchen. For several seconds I could not even breathe normally. The house. My home. The place Arthur and I spent 42 years building together. The place where Ryan learned to ride a bicycle. The place where every Thanksgiving dinner, every Christmas morning, every family milestone had happened. They were discussing it as though ownership had already changed. As though I were merely an obstacle waiting to disappear from the paperwork. Ryan lowered his voice, but I still caught enough to understand. We just have to get through the remaining legal steps. Legal steps. Not possibilities. Not plans. Steps. Actions already underway. Vanessa laughed softly. Honestly, she barely remembers conversations from one day to the next. Neither of them knew I was standing only a few feet away on the other side of the wall. Neither of them knew I had heard every word that mattered. A moment later, the doorbell rang. I walked calmly to answer it. By the time I opened the door, both of them were smiling. Vanessa pointed to her sunglasses. I think I left those inside. I smiled back and handed them over. Memory can be tricky sometimes, I said pleasantly. For the briefest moment, both of them froze. Then Vanessa laughed and thanked me. They drove away a minute later. I locked the door and stood alone in the entryway. The uncertainty was gone now. Completely gone. I no longer suspected that something was happening. I knew it. More importantly, I finally understood the scale of it. Whatever process had begun was moving quickly. They believed they had control. They believed I was unaware. And somewhere within those remaining legal steps was the answer to everything I had been trying to uncover. The next morning, I stopped searching for clues and started searching for help. For weeks I had been piecing together fragments of a puzzle that made less sense the more I uncovered. Now I finally knew enough to recognize something important. I was not dealing with a misunderstanding. I was dealing with legal documents, property records, and decisions being made without my knowledge. That meant I needed someone who understood those things better than I did. I spent most of the morning going through Arthur's old address book. It was a habit I had not touched in years. Arthur kept records of everyone he trusted. Accountants, contractors, insurance agents, and attorneys. Near the back of the book, written in his careful handwriting, I found a name I had not thought about in a very long time. Charles Bennett, the attorney who had helped us update our estate documents years earlier. I stared at the name for several seconds before dialing the number. I expected it to be disconnected. Instead, a receptionist answered it. Informed me that Mr. Bennett still practiced law, although on a limited schedule. When I explained who I was, she placed me on hold. Less than a minute later, a familiar voice came through the phone. Eleanor Whitmore, he asked. It has been a long time. We spoke for nearly 20 minutes. I did not tell him everything immediately. Instead, I described the missing documents, the certified letter, the county records, and the conversations I had overheard. The longer I spoke, the quieter he became. Finally, he asked a question that caught me off guard. Have you personally reviewed every document that was supposedly signed in your name? No, I admitted. Then that is where we begin, he said. 2 days later, I drove to his office. The building was located in a neighboring town about 30 minutes away. Charles looked older than I remembered, but his eyes were sharp. After greeting me warmly, he listened as I explained everything from the beginning. He interrupted only occasionally to ask specific questions. Dates, names, addresses, details. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. Something about this concerns me, he said. Very much. My heart began to pound. Why? He opened a folder on his desk. Because a few months ago, I received correspondence related to your property. For a moment I could not speak. My property. He nodded. The paperwork suggested changes involving ownership and future control of certain assets. Why was I never told? I asked. Charles looked directly at me. That is exactly the question I have been asking. He reached into the folder and removed several copies of documents. Even from across the desk, I recognized my address. My house. My signature appeared on some pages as well. Yet something felt wrong. Very wrong. Charles slid the documents toward me. When I reviewed these filings, I noticed irregularities. Not enough to make accusations, but enough to raise concerns. My eyes moved slowly across the pages. The signatures resembled mine, yet they lacked the consistency I had developed after decades of signing checks, tax returns, and legal forms. Charles pointed to several sections. Before anyone finalizes anything, we need to verify exactly how these documents were created, who witnessed them, and who benefited from them. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I had not allowed myself to feel. Hope. Because as I sat across from Charles Bennett, I realized I was no longer facing this alone. And judging by the expression on his face, he believed there was much more hidden beneath the surface than even I had discovered. Over the next 2 weeks, Charles moved carefully. He never rushed. He never made dramatic promises. Instead, he gathered facts. Every few days he called with another update, another document, another question that slowly transformed suspicion into evidence. The first breakthrough came from the certified letter. Using postal records, Charles confirmed that the letter had been delivered to my address and signed for by someone other than me. The signature on the delivery receipt did not match mine. More importantly, the letter itself contained legal notices regarding changes connected to my property, notices I had never received. Then came the banking records. Charles helped me obtain copies of transactions and authorizations connected to accounts that had supposedly required my approval. Several signatures appeared inconsistent. Some documents contained dates on which I could prove I had been somewhere else entirely. One afternoon, Charles invited me back to his office. When I arrived, a thick folder sat on the conference table between us. He opened it and began placing documents in neat rows. Property records, delivery receipts, signature comparisons, communication logs. Each piece alone raised questions. Together, they told a troubling story. The pattern matters, Charles said. Not just individual documents. The pattern. I nodded silently. By now, I understood exactly what he meant. Every missing piece I had discovered over the past month connected to the next one. Missing mail connected to hidden notices. Hidden notices connected to filings. Filings connected to signatures. Signatures connected to authority over the house. The chain was becoming impossible to ignore. Then Charles shared something that surprised me. There is a meeting scheduled next week, he said. A final review involving the property documents. I stared at him. Final review? He nodded. Several parties appear to believe everything is already settled. For a moment, neither of us spoke. I immediately knew who those parties were. Ryan and Vanessa had sounded confident for weeks. Now I understood why. They believed the process was almost complete. They believed nobody would challenge it. They believed I remained confused and unaware. Charles closed the folder. I think we should attend. The meeting took place the following Thursday morning in a professional office building outside Harrisburg. The conference room was modern and quiet, with large windows overlooking a parking lot below. Charles and I arrived early. I sat calmly beside him while reviewing a few notes. For the first time in weeks, I felt completely steady. Not angry, not frightened, just prepared. About 10 minutes later, the door opened. Ryan entered first. Vanessa followed closely behind. The moment they saw me sitting at the table, both stopped walking. Their surprise was impossible to hide. "Mom," Ryan said, "what are you doing here?" I smiled politely. I was invited. Vanessa glanced toward Charles and then back at me. Her confidence seemed to flicker. As more participants entered the room, formal introductions began. Documents were distributed. Discussions started. Ryan and Vanessa appeared increasingly uncomfortable as questions became more specific. Who authorized certain filings? Who received particular notices? Who witnessed various signatures? Each answer seemed to create another problem. Then Charles quietly opened his folder. One by one, he placed documents onto the table. The delivery receipt, the correspondence records, the signature analysis, the timeline. No raised voices, no accusations, just facts. By the time the final document appeared, The atmosphere in the room had completely changed. The confidence Ryan and Vanessa had carried for months was gone. And for the first time since this entire ordeal began, everyone else could see exactly what I had finally uncovered. The meeting ended very differently from how Ryan and Vanessa had expected. The review process was immediately paused, and several of the documents that had been treated as routine suddenly became subjects of serious scrutiny. Nobody accused anyone of anything in that room. Nobody raised their voice. The facts spoke loudly enough on their own. As participants gathered their papers and prepared to leave, Ryan avoided looking directly at me. Vanessa spent most of her time staring at the conference table. The confidence they had displayed for months had vanished completely. Charles remained calm throughout the entire process. As we walked toward the parking lot, he carried his folder under one arm and simply said, "This is why details matter." Over the following weeks, additional reviews took place. More records were examined. More questions were asked. Several filings connected to my property were challenged and ultimately set aside pending further verification. The chain of assumptions that Ryan and Vanessa had relied upon began falling apart one link at a time. Without unquestioned documents and missing notices working in their favor, the situation looked very different. During that period, Ryan called me repeatedly. At first, I did not answer. I needed time. Not because I was angry, although there was certainly pain. I needed time because I was trying to understand how we had reached this point. I had spent decades believing that trust within a family was something permanent. Now I understood that trust required protection just like anything else of value. Eventually, I agreed to meet him. We sat together in a small coffee shop near the river, the same place where Arthur and I used to stop on weekend drives. Ryan looked older than I remembered, tired, nervous. For several minutes, neither of us said much. Finally, he spoke. "I never thought it would go this far." I listened quietly. "Then how far did you think it would go?" I asked. He had no answer. That silence told me more than any explanation could have. Some choices begin with small compromises. A shortcut here, a justification there. By the time people recognize where those decisions are leading, they are already much farther down the road than they intended to travel. A few months later, all questions surrounding the house were resolved. My ownership remained exactly where it had always belonged. The property records were corrected. The outstanding matters were closed. For the first time in a long while, peace returned to my home. One autumn evening, I sat alone on the back porch watching the sun settle behind the trees. The air was cool, carrying the familiar scent of fallen leaves. Everything looked exactly as it had before this ordeal began. The maple tree Arthur planted still stood near the fence. The bird feeder still swayed gently in the breeze. The house remained unchanged. Yet I felt different. Stronger, perhaps. Wiser, certainly. Many people assume growing older means becoming less aware of the world around you. They mistake kindness for weakness. They mistake patience for confusion. They mistake silence for ignorance. What I learned is that experience has a way of sharpening certain truths. You begin to notice patterns, motives, small inconsistencies that younger people often overlook. Looking back, the greatest mistake anyone made was not underestimating my memory. It was underestimating my ability to see what was happening around me. Because while age may change many things, it does not erase a lifetime of judgment. And in the end, that judgment protected the home Arthur and I built, the life we created, and the truth that had been hiding in plain sight all along.